What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Killer Drone, and welcome to a brand new Minecraft tutorial video. In today's episode, I'm going to be showing you guys 6 unique paths that you can implement in your own world. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get right into it. Now, all of these paths that you will see in this video, I have used at some point in one of my worlds, whether it be a Let's Play or a survival multiplayer world. All of these are tried and true and tested, and they all look absolutely amazing when implemented. So, hopefully you find one that you see in this video that you can use in whatever biome that you're in. But let's go ahead and let's start off with the jungle path. This is one that I absolutely love because it's one that I've been using for quite a while on the Truly Bedrock server because I actually live in a jungle on that server. And this is a path that is very lush, very beautiful, but also extremely natural looking. It's not got a lot of harsh stone textures or anything like that in this path. It's nice and quaint. Let's go ahead and talk about the block palette for this path. You're going to start off with a bit of coarse dirt, some path blocks, some podzol, some brown concrete powder, some jungle leaves, jungle trap doors, jungle fences, and then also some cobblestone and some stone just to add some of these rock features off to the side. Rock features are something that a lot of people don't add to the side of their path, but it's something that adds just a little bit of detail that brings a path more uniqueness. And I really like having those on the edges. But let's actually start making a brand new path over in this direction. Okay, so let's say that this is your section of jungle that you need to make a path through. It's fairly dense, has a lot of trees around it, but you've already cleared out all of the leaves and stuff that are on the jungle floor, and now you just want to pretty this area up a bit by adding a path through here to direct your player. So what we're going to do is start off with all of our paths with some coarse dirt. Now, I like using coarse dirt for pathing blocks because I think that path blocks are a bit too bold. So I like to use coarse dirt. I think that it's a much better textured block than the path block itself. The path block itself is just a bit too dark and too forceful, I guess. We're still going to use a bit of the pathing block, but we're not going to use it as the main feature. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to fill in this entire area with coarse dirt first, just so that we can kind of get an outline of where our path is actually going to be. So this is kind of a general layout. This is kind of where our path should sit, is something a bit like this. I'll kind of round this edge off, that way you can kind of get a better look, but there you go. There is where you want your path to be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to implement some of these other colors, and we're going to start off with the grass path because a lot of people use these in their paths a lot, and I just don't like the way that they look. I think that they're too bold. So what I like to do is I like to take the grass path blocks and kind of add them to the edges of your path, as if they are kind of a rut on the side of the road. I think that that looks really good, and I don't like to add too many of them. 2, 3, 4, something like that in a section this big is absolutely plenty. You don't want too many of these, or they really start to overtake the foundation of what you're trying to make here. Let's go back to my example over here. You'll see I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like I only have 6 path blocks throughout this entire big section. I just kind of use them very sparingly. I don't think that these are a main block that you should be using in your paths. Next, what we're going to use is podzol, and podzol I actually really like inside of jungle areas. Podzol, if you think of podzol as exactly what the block is kind of supposed to be, it's supposed to be a bunch of leaves on top of dirt or kind of stuck inside of mud. So using that in a jungle actually makes a lot of sense. So what I do is I just kind of spread this around kind of randomly throughout my path, and you can actually have a lot of this stuff. It actually looks pretty good even if you put this as kind of your main foundation and then mix in your coarse dirt. Either way really works, but adding in podzol can really bring another layer to your path and make it look really, really good. In fact, I may even do a slightly larger section over here and then cut this off a bit like that. So a lot of this is very dynamic. A lot of this is kind of up to interpretation. Play around with these blocks though, and see if you can find something that looks good. The next thing is brown concrete powder. This is one that I love using in paths and jungles because it looks like mud. You can kind of sprinkle this in every now and then just to get you a slightly different texture through here. And it looks like you have a slightly different, muddier texture in this area to kind of bring the path a little bit more to life, as if some of this has been holding water and you got some mud in your path. I really, really like this. I'm going to skip over the jungle leaves for right now and go directly into the trapdoors. Trapdoors are just like the path block. You don't want to use a ton of them in your path because it's supposed to be as if the path has been repaired by somebody laying a piece of wood over the path. So what I like to do is I'll just kind of stick one here and like here. And it just adds a very small dynamic to the path. Nothing overpowering, but just something different to look at. Think of it as like sprinkles on top of a cake. It's just something you want a little bit of, not a ridiculous amount of. All right, now let's move on to your jungle fences. Jungle fences are going to be what gives our player direction. It's going to tell you, hey, this is where your path is. And this does not have to be a completed fence. It can actually just be something like that. You can totally tell that this is marking out the outline of a path, but it's not completely connected up, and it doesn't need to be. In fact, I think that it looks better if it's kind of broken and beat up. So just kind of do a few fences like this, maybe one here, maybe one along here, and maybe one along like that. And there you go. You have another little small detail added into your path. Now, one thing that I know a lot of people don't like to do because they don't like adding stone and cobblestone into their build, what you can do is actually add this onto the side of your path. And I think that that looks absolutely amazing. So I think that I may add just a little stone feature over to one side here. And I'm going to make it completely out of stone here to begin with. So something a bit like that. And then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to lay some cobblestone into it to kind of break it up. And now we have ourselves a nice little stone feature that's also inside of the jungle. It's very small, but it can be kind of a big detail. Now, if you want to light up your path, one of the great things that you can do is you can actually make like a lamp that comes over your path. You just get out some lanterns and throw them on the end of one of these fence posts like so, and that will add yourself a nice little bit of light on your path. Alternatively, you can lay them on the fence posts themselves down here, and that will also work. Also, if you have any branches that kind of come off of the tree, kind of at an angle, you can hang them from the tree itself. Now, jungle trees don't typically have that, but it is another added layer that you can use. So now let's talk about transitioning. How do you get from this section of the path up one block to another section? Because just throwing down staircases could look a little bit weird. So what I like to do is I like to add in another block that can get us from one level to another level. So what I'll normally do is I'll place in some mossy cobblestone slabs all the way around just to break up and add a new texture for the steps. Then I'll come back through and break out some of the mossy cobblestone slabs and just add a bit of jungle wood. And then I'll also make sure that I leave the step up a little bit jagged. You don't want it to be straight across or anything like that, because the more depth that you can add to this, the better. And that is a nice little step up back there. And then what you'll do is you'll come back this way and you'll continue your path heading up this hill. Once again, start with some coarse dirt and then mix in the rest of your blocks as you go. Add in some pathing blocks, add in some podzol, just like so, and then add in a bit of brown concrete powder very sparingly. And there you go. You now have your entire path section done. You have lighting in, you have a path in, you have some nice rock features in. It's a pretty good looking path. Now there's other things that you can do. You can add rock and water features over to the sides of your path and things like that. But for the most part, this is a nice base level path for a jungle biome. I almost forgot the very last thing, the piece de resistance. Once you are done with your path completely, come back through with your jungle leaves and make sure that you're blocking off some lines of sight for the player. This is once again to kind of tunnel their vision down the path and get the player looking where you want them to look. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some bushes all around here and just make it look a little bit nicer by adding some more greenery to the area. It's kind of subtle, but it does do a lot for the area as you're walking down the path here, just having a little bit of greenery on each side of the path. I did the exact same thing over here. I just forgot to include it over there. So there we go. Crisis averted. Now we are moving on into the forest path, and the forest path is going to be more of a general path to go through any type of forest, a birch forest, an oak forest, pretty much any type of forest this path will work for and will look relatively good in that area. Now, our block palette for this area is going to be once again coarse dirt as our base, and then we're going to have grass blocks, podzol, a little bit of grass, some leaf blocks, whatever leaf block that you have in that biome, whether it be oak, birch, or whatever. I recommend using that type of leaf. Then some trapdoors, once again, depending on that biome. In this case, we're doing an oak forest, but if you're doing a darkwood forest, maybe do some darkwood planks. Then get some fences, get some stone, get some cobblestone, and then if you need to add trees, always you can add some trees. But these are going to be the main blocks that we use in order to make this path. And it's going to be very similar to the last path that we did with the jungle, except this time we're not going to be adding in the brown concrete powder because forests aren't supposed to be extremely muddy. They're supposed to be relatively dry, but they're going to have a bit more podzol. So let me go ahead and set up another section over here and we'll do another tutorial. Okay, so here we are with a nice little forest biome. We already cleared out all of the brush that is underneath, all of the grass, all of the any type of blemish that's in the world, flowers, anything like that, we've went ahead and removed. And now we just have this nice little section here that we want to create a path going through. So once again, what we're going to do is remove all of these blocks and start sprinkling in the coarse dirt very randomly throughout here, but we're going to use this as our base layer once again. So fill all of this in with coarse dirt. That way you get a nice little outline of your path right off the start. So go ahead, fill all of this in with coarse dirt, and then we'll start mixing in some different blocks. So there we go. Here's our path, and I'll expand it out a bit. There we go. That's our general path here, and I think that that is a nice little base layer to begin with. Now what I'm going to do is, once again, with the grass block paths, I'm just going to add them in very sparingly throughout here. With the podzol, I'm once again going to add a little bit more podzol, but I'm going to add the podzol around the trees this time. I'm going to have a little bit here in the middle, but for the most part, I want to go around the trees with the podzol. So all the way around the tree, just like this, I want to have podzol just like so. And I'm going to do that for all of these trees because I want it to look like the leaves are falling off the trees and making us kind of an autumn looking path. So go ahead, circle all of this around. Same with this tree as well. And I just broke my tree, but that's okay because I'll just replace that wooden block. Go ahead, place that back down. There we go. Now we have a bit of podzol in. I'm going to sprinkle some into the middle as well, just to make it look a bit more forested. Actually, I don't like that block there. Maybe here, here, there, and then maybe some there. And there. Perfect. So that is a nice little bit of podzol, once again kind of mixed throughout. You can now add in some grass blocks as well. Grass blocks do look decent enough in this path that you can add it in. I wouldn't just put them like dead center in here, but if you want to kind of add some out toward the edge just to make things look a little bit more natural, you can totally do that. It's not a problem adding in grass blocks into this particular path. Next thing that you want to do is add in some oak trap doors. Just kind of throw these guys in. Once again, make it look as if somebody has repaired the path over time. So just throw these guys in kind of sparingly once again. Not too many of them, but not too little either. And there you go, you have yourself a nice little path with some trapdoors. Once again, you're going to want to direct your player with some fences. You can do this however you want. Get creative, just kind of throw the fences down in an area. This is going to be to really just tell your player, hey, this is where you need to go along your path. Now it's time to get a bit of lighting in, and inside of forests, I don't really like to add the lighting like this, where you have a lamppost. I'd rather just throw them on top of the fence posts themselves, because I think that that looks a little bit better. But you can do whatever you want. It is your path after all. I also like to hang them from big trees like this. I like to hang them in the bark of those trees, because I think that that looks really, really nice as you're walking through. If there's a nice little lantern stuck inside of the tree itself, I think that that's just a nice little piece to add. Last but not least, you're going to want to add in some bushes to the outside of your path. Once again, just trying to cut off some lines of sight. You don't want a ridiculous amount of bushes for something like this, but just a little bit, just to once again kind of tell your player, hey, this is where you should be walking. This is where the path is. Walk between the bushes and between the fences. That is your pathway. And last but not least, since we are in a forest biome, we're going to want a little bit of growth on the ground. So I recommend taking a bit of bone meal and just kind of sprinkling it around your path as well. This is going to add a nice little bit of detail. Make sure that you trim your grass to where it actually looks decent though. So if there's any grass in the way of your path, kind of get rid of that. You don't want flowers on your path either, kind of get rid of those. And just make sure that all of your grass is on the edge and not interfering with your path itself. So this just adds a nice little level of detail to the path, just like so. And there you go, you have yourself a nice little pathway. Now another thing you can do if you really want to is you can get like a little bit of grass on your pathway. But once again, I wouldn't do too much of this because it can be a bit overpowering, and I wouldn't do any too high grass in your path whatsoever. Why is this... Oh no, there we go. There we go. That's looking good. Let's go ahead and add an oak fence there, and then maybe a coarse dirt there. And there we go. We have a little bit of grass on our path, but we don't want a ridiculous amount. We want this path to look like it's actually being kept up with. Also, one last thing for this forest build, what you want to do in order to transition between block levels is just add in some oak slabs. Oak slabs look really good in this type of path. You don't really need to do any type of mixing or anything like that. It really just looks good on its own. Next up, we have the desert design, and this one is a little bit more basic, but that's because you're in the desert. Things aren't supposed to be very lush and very pretty. Our block palette for this one is once again kept fairly simple. We have some sand, we have some terracotta, we have some red sand, we have a bit of sandstone, we have acacia fence, acacia buttons, and then some dead bushes. And this is going to be all that we use for the desert biome. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a brand new section over there for us to make a new path, and I'll bring you guys back in just a second. Okay, so let's say that this is your desert area that you need to make a path through. This is going to be relatively easy because deserts have a lot of flat surface to them, so making a path that kind of moves with the land is relatively easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with red sand. I'm going to use red sand as kind of our base layer for this entire path, and that means we're going to be using a lot of it. Think of this as kind of your coarse dirt that we've been using this whole time. Use this as a nice base layer, and then we'll come through and mix some other blocks in with this. But this will be a nice way to kind of outline where your path is going to be. So something a bit like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and mix in a bit of terracotta in this. This is just going to give a little bit of differentiation in texture. Once again, we're not going to want to use too much of this. Just use it a little bit sparingly to break up the texture of the red sand ever so slightly, and that will make a nice looking path in this area as well. Now I like to break up a bit of the regular sand texture with some of this smooth sandstone texture. Just the regular sandstone, not the smooth sandstone, but the top of this is smooth, if that makes sense. Just regular sandstone. Mix this in ever so slightly with your build as well, because if you take a look at this, this is a little bit darker than the actual sand. So as you can see, it's a little bit of a different texture. So it's a nice thing to just kind of add in sparingly into your path to add some nice texture difference. So something a bit like that. Now, once again, we're going to outline our path with fences, let the player know where they are supposed to go along the path. So just kind of mix this in. Once again, since this is in a desert, things are kind of meant to be kind of janky, you know? So it doesn't have to be the prettiest looking fence by any means. Let me go ahead and add our cactus back there. And last but not least, what I would recommend is going around getting some dead bushes. Throw some of these guys in just to add a bit of texture. Once again, this path is kind of bland because there's not a lot that you can do with it. It's a dead area. Literally, the desert is supposed to be dead, so you can't do a lot of lushness to it. But this is a nice path that you can implement. And in order to go up and down between layers, I would recommend anything that is acacia. In fact, you can even come with some acacia buttons and kind of lay them down along the path as if they are pebbles as well. But if you take some acacia planks and use them, you can make an up area kind of, you know, something like this, and then have it continue into your path going upward. It doesn't look bad. It's actually a pretty good looking build. Any type of red or orange is going to look really good inside of the desert. Next up, we have an extremely general path. This path will work pretty much anywhere. It'll work in a city, it'll work in plains, it'll work in a forest. It's very, very general landscaping. It's not anything special, and you can tell that just by the block palette. Coarse dirt, gravel, and then I like to add in some brown concrete powder, spruce trap doors, spruce fences, and then some grass paths just mixed in. Now, lucky for this, because it's such a general path, I don't really have to do a lot of making up of a biome over here. I can just come over here and start, and we're going to make ourselves a nice little area here for our path, and this is going to be our path area. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to fill this in with coarse dirt, and I'm going to use coarse dirt once again as kind of my base block. It's going to be the block that I mix everything else into. So there we go. There is our path. Maybe get it a little bit more curvy over toward the edge, and there we go. Absolutely perfect. Now we're going to come through. We're going to mix in a bit of gravel just like so all throughout the path. Not too much, but not too little. Think of this kind of like your podsole that you've used in the other paths, and just give it a nice little texture break. Then you could come through with your brown concrete powder, add in some muddier textures to this as well, just a nice little texture difference, and that adds something nice to the path. And last but not least, some spruce doors into the path just to make it look like it's been repaired a bit. Now, once again, you want to direct users where the path actually is, so just some fence posts around the edge will be sufficient to do that. Once again, they don't have to be great looking, just have to kind of point the character in a particular direction. Also, I left out grass paths. You can kind of just throw a couple of these around. They're, like I said, I really don't like that block. I don't think that they're a great looking block. So just throw them around where you see fit. They're nothing special. You can even implement some grass blocks to this as well. I would recommend doing it toward the edge, kind of like I've done here. I just left some grass blocks. But if you want to add some to the middle, you can. I just wouldn't go overboard with it by any means, because they're kind of a bright green and it can overtake the path quickly. Last but not least, take out some bone meal, and once again, bone meal up the outside of your path. Add some bushes if you want to, or leaves if you want to, because that will make the path look good as well. But just bone mealing an area and then trimming the grass up to how you like it also adds a fair amount of detail. In order to light this path, once again, just throw some lanterns on the fence posts. It'll look great. Now, this path is another general path that will work in pretty close to every biome, but it's one that is probably my favorite in this world. It's a stone path with andesite and cobblestone mixed into it, and also a bit of variation with some buttons, some slabs, and also hay bales. This works great for any type of road that connects up villages, or any road inside of villages, or anything like that. This is a very dynamic road, and I absolutely love this path. Once again, it's not something that you need to do a ton of work with. Maybe getting the hay bales is a lot of work, but once again, you don't have to have a ton of these. These are just like added texture elements, and you can kind of add them over time. But this is probably my favorite path, and one that I use quite a lot on some of my Let's Plays. The block palette for this path is going to be stone, cobblestone, the stone slabs, the cobblestone slabs, andesite slabs, stone buttons, hay bales, and spruce fences. And that's pretty much everything that is used in this path. Let's go ahead and build it over here. So what I'm going to do is, once again, just kind of dig out an area that I need to make a path in. In fact, I may even curve this area a bit, just kind of show you guys what you can do whenever you curve a path, because curving a path makes it look a lot more natural. So this is going to be our path. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a stone base, and we'll do something like this. And I'm just going to cover this entire thing in stone, and then we're going to come back and add a gradient along this path with the cobblestone and andesite. And it's going to add a fair amount of depth and detail into this path. So this is kind of our general road. Now I'm going to come through, I'm going to mix in a fair amount of cobblestone, make the road look like it is a bit worn down and like it's been used fairly often. So something a bit like that will do. Maybe add in a bit more cobblestone. We really want this thing to look like it's been heavily used. Then go and get yourself some andesite as well. Just mix in some andesite into this just like so. And I think that my path may be a bit too thin here. I think I may take this out just a bit. Add in some stone, remove some stone. And once again, you're just kind of going along with what you feel for the path. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means. In fact, paths actually look a little bit better when they're not perfect, whenever they do have a little bit of, let's call them character, added to the path. It looks a lot better. So just add yourself a bit of character to your paths as you do them. They don't have to be perfect. It's mostly just scattering blocks around until things look at least decent. So this one has a nice little curve to it. What I'm going to do is come through with my spruce fences pretty early here in the path. Once again, I can even put the spruce fences on the path. It doesn't matter. We're just going with this and doing it very naturally. So direct our player with our fences just like that, so we know that the player is like, oh, hey, this is a path, because the fences tell me that I need to be going that way. Now what we can do is add in a bit of hay bales to the side over here. And actually, I think I'll do like this. And then I'll do another one kind of like this, like so. And then I'll come through and I'll add a bit of variation to the sides of the walkway as well. So add in some slabs, add in some cobblestone just to kind of break it up. Make the path look like it has a little bit more detail, just like so. Add in some stone buttons as if it is pebbles that are on the path that are kind of coming loose. And there you go. You have yourself a nice little path. Last thing that you need to do is add some lighting with some lanterns on the fence posts, and then take out some bone meal and bone meal around the path. Make sure that it looks nice and presentable from the outside as well. This is one that flowers and stuff also do really nicely. So if you can get flowers around this build, it's going to look really good. Once again, trim your grass. Make sure that's not too long or has something like this where it has a ridiculous amount of too tall ferns all next to each other. And just kind of trim your grass down so it looks at least presentable and decent. And there we go. We have ourselves another path. Now we're going to move over to another world where we have a snow biome, and that will be the last path that we cover in today's video. And last but certainly not least, we have our snow path. This is a relatively simple path, And it's very similar to the one that we just did, except that in the snow biome, the textures are very much toned down in the path itself. And instead what we're doing is we're bringing the outside of the path a little bit more pop by adding in some spruce wood. So our entire palette for this path is going to be spruce fences, stone, cobblestone, andesite, snow and snow layers, so full blocks and snow layers, and then spruce logs. So in order to make this path up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to clear us out a relatively large area and just give us a nice little section for our path. Now, in order to start this one off, we're going to do it the exact same way that we did our previous path, and we're going to start off with a base layer of stone, and then we're going to come back through and mix in some of these other blocks. Once again, make sure that you have snow on all of the layers around the path as well, because otherwise it's going to look a little bit goofy. So just do something like this, and there you go. You have yourself a nice looking small path there as kind of an example. Come in, mix in some cobblestone, make this entire road look like it is being used, and just mix them in kind of randomly. You want it to be very much a gradient. Come back through with your andesite, mix that in as well, and once again, a gradient. The entire thing should look very, very much like a gradient, and I absolutely love how this is turning out already. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to surround our path with some different levels of snow. This is why you're going to need the snow, is so that you can outline your path with different snow levels. And it just makes it look like the path has been cleared out by somebody, as if somebody has pushed the snow off to the side. So just by building up around your path, you can actually get in some more layers of detail into this path compared to the other ones that we've done. Once again, you can add in things like fence posts. I wouldn't recommend adding fence posts on top of the grass itself, but rather add it on top of your current path. So maybe do something like this every now and then. Just add it on top of the stone. Don't add it on top of anything like this, because then you get that issue where the grass actually is exposed. But something like this is not bad. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get in some spruce trees here in order to add us a little bit more of a dynamic feel. So let's get like a 4 tall tree here. I'm going to grab out a bit of bone meal like so. And can I grow this thing? I think I may be a bit too close. Oh wait, I remember this. I have to clear out all of the snow layers on Java Edition. So hold on. Go ahead and remove that. Do it like this. Okay, still messed up. Is it gonna grow now? See, Java Edition has this weird bug where if there is a snow block or anything like that too close to the tree, it won't actually grow. So you have to move it a little bit away from the tree itself, but then you can just come back and fill all of this in with snow, and it's not too bad. And that's usually only an issue for the 4x4 trees. If I were to plant something like a 1x1, yeah, this one grows relatively easy. So you may just want to do 1 wide trees next to your path, because sometimes it's a bit easier to get them to grow. I'm going to go ahead and put another one over here. And there we go. We now have a nice looking path. I'm going to trim this tree just a bit so it's not over the path itself. And there we go. That's not looking too bad. This tree could probably use some work. Maybe make it a custom tree or move it back by a block in order to make it look a little bit better. But that's good enough for this little example. Another thing that you can do is you can actually remove some of these snow layers over on the side and add like a fallen piece of wood. And this is just another little small thing that you can do. Once again, get creative with your snow layers. Make it look like there's been snow that's been accumulating on the log itself. You can add in some spruce bushes around the bottom. I wouldn't go too much with these because you are in a snow biome. It's supposed to be kind of desolate, kind of like your desert. But if you want to add in just a few, it's not going to be too bad. Now let's talk about lighting. Lighting this is going to be key because you cannot use a ton of lanterns and just throw them on top of the fence post. If you do that, you're actually going to be melting all of the snow around you. So what you'll see is what I did here is I actually brought a lantern way up and then directly over the path. The reason that I did this is if snow is in light level of 10 or higher, which you can check in your F3 screen, then the snow will melt. But as you can see here, all of the snow is in pretty much 9 block light, so it's not going to melt. Even the snow that is right here next to the post, it's only at a block light. Actually, yeah, no, this one's at a block light of 9. So yeah, we're fine. None of that snow is going to melt. So make sure that you're checking your light levels, but basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring this up by 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over by 2, just like that, so it's in the dead center of our path. And then we're going to take a lantern and just throw it on that block. Then you can walk around here, make sure that all of your snow levels are not within 10 blocks of this lantern, but you should be good to go. And actually, I think I may have built my lantern one too small. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, it needs to be 5 up. 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought that looked a little bit short. So go up by 5, and then over 2, and then down 1. So there you go. That's how you can add light to your path. Once again, I wouldn't add a ridiculous amount of light because you don't want all of your snow layers to start melting around here. Future Killer Drone here. I forgot to tell you about one last block that looks really good in this type of path in the snow biome, and that is the light gray concrete powder. It actually looks really good sprinkled in the path, just kind of like you would do with your brown concrete powder, just ever so slightly. Add a bit of this in, and it gives another nice little bit of texture and detail to the path. It's one of those things that I kind of sometimes forget about these, but they do add another layer of detail, so I highly recommend using these in your path as well. Just the light gray concrete powder mixes in very, very nicely. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this tutorial. I do hope that you enjoyed. I hope that I went into enough depth that you guys can actually recreate some of these paths in your own worlds. And if you do happen to use some of these paths, make sure that you tweet me pictures or even put them in my Discord. I love seeing that all of these tutorial videos are actually being used by some of you guys. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video, as well as if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. You guys have a great day.